Ousted MSNBC anchor Joy Reid is sharing more of her thoughts about why she ended up getting the axe just a couple of months ago. Let's roll this first clip of Joy Reid in conversation with Katie Couric.
I got to, NBC, and I Twitter back in 2000. I think I joined in 08 or 09, and the bosses were horrified. And anytime I would tweet anything, I would get calls. I would get, please get off Twitter. We hate it. They don't like that it pulls their talent and their reporters out of their control, because now you're not running what you're tweeting through standards and practices. It's giving your personality directly to the audience, which they don't like because it's no longer managed and curated by them. And they don't want people breaking news.
I'm just now realizing that Katie Couric has that famous picture of Joan Didion framed behind her on her podcast set, which is just, to be fair, I have a Joan Didion book on our set back here, but that just, Katie Couric with the Joan Didion portrait is something just really getting under my skin this morning, Ryan. But that's neither here nor there. Joy Reid.
We need guest hosts, right? While Sagar's out.
Katie Couric.
Katie Couric or Joy Reid, right?
Hey, bring them in, see what happens. It's a fine line between, I've always said this, between Katie Couric and Sagar and Jetty. They share many similarities. Yeah, so it's something to think about. Now, Joy Reid makes...
Katie and Sagar would be fun together.
Yes. Something to think about. Producers, I know you're listening. But Joy Reid makes a fairly interesting case in this clip, by the way. And I will not be rescinding any of my criticisms of Joy Reid whatsoever. But she makes an interesting case about MSNBC in this clip, which is that she didn't have the worst ratings at MSNBC, which is a low bar, by the way. She says to Katie Couric, I wasn't told the ratings were terrible. It's something you did. You tweeted a terrible thing. She said she had been being, quote, extra careful on social media at the time because there was a real anxiety, she said, about it. And that's kind of interesting. She says it wasn't the ratings because we had just a ratings meeting a couple of weeks before that talking about the fact that our show, other than Rachel Maddow, we were down the least after Trump's election win. So being down the least. Right. But it's actually an interesting point because it's not as though, now that we have a few months in hindsight, it's not as though MSNBC is actually trying to change its brand. It's not as though, so when I saw the firing of Joy Reid, and I was like, this is interesting because Joy Reid was, I think, symbolically a very powerful representation of, and maybe we disagree on this, but where MSNBC went wrong during the Trump years, which was this kind of sanctimonious doubling down on being the voice of truth and facts, and nobody else could possibly or nobody who disagrees with me is on the side of truth or facts. I'm on the side of truth or facts, and I will tell you what's right and what's wrong. And I thought maybe that they were getting rid of Joy Reid because they were trying, however ham-fistedly to go in a different direction. But they're definitely not really doing that. They haven't really made any significant changes.
Yeah, I don't see Joy as being differentiating herself in that crowd of people. During the first Trump years, I think she had the same kind of approach as almost all of them did. The thing that did differentiate her from the pack was that she was consistently critical of Israel's assault on Gaza. Like that was, if you try to think about the things that make her different than other hosts, either on CNN or MSNBC, that's the only one that I can think of.
So she doesn't cite that. She says, quote, I'm a black woman doing the thing, you know what I mean? And so I'm not different from Maddow or Nicole Wallace, but quote, I think that there's a difference for Trump in hearing the kinds of criticism specifically out of a black woman.
I think that is true.
It bothers him in a way it doesn't bother him like anything else. She says there's a fear of him, implying at MSNBC, we're seeing it everywhere. Now, I
think she's right about that. Like, sorry, Trump people. I think she is.
Really? That Trump has some issue?
Black women being critical of him hits harder for him than like a Rachel Maddow. Or certainly hits harder than like a white guy. Especially a good-looking white guy.
The man
He's
he
fine
hates,
with that.
Well, I guess this is a little bit different, but the man he hates more than anyone else is Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd seems to be gets under his skin more than just about anyone.
But he likes some of the other guys. Like who wrote the Enemy of the People book?
The Enemy of the People book.
the CNN guy.
Oh, Jim Acosta.
Yeah. You can tell he loves those
He
guys.
loves going back and forth with
Yeah.
Jim Acosta.
Yeah, because that's a handsome newsman right there. You're fake news.
Yeah, Chuck Todd isn't exactly out of central casting, as Trump
He
would
wants
say.
them out of central casting. He wants his enemies to be good-looking white guys.
Now, remind me. So I'm looking at this right now because MSNBC was spun off. So Comcast spun off its portfolio of cable news networks, and that includes MSNBC. This was announced back in November. Reid was let go. That was earlier this spring, roughly around March-ish. So that's why at the time I thought maybe MSNBC was just going in a different direction, which, by the way, would mean getting rid of Nicole Wallace, or at least like turning down the volume on Nicole Wallace.
It'd be the entire.
The Scarborough Brzezinski disaster, which is
Hayes, Maddow, like they all have to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're trying to brand differently, at least you would. But so she's saying she's basically lumping in the CBS settlement and other settlements, ABC's Stephanopoulos settlement, and implying that MSNBC might have a similar fear. Now,
which I think is also true.
It's interesting because it's a question of whether Comcast still has. So where they are in the process of actually spinning MSNBC off, is Comcast. Is there implication that Comcast is afraid, or is it that MSNBC? Because MSNBC as a left of center network, I don't think would be particularly afraid unless they're trying to get sold. Because that was another thing. Elon Musk was flirting with the possibility that maybe he would buy MSNBC, but you could easily see another like right-wing billionaire, doesn't have to be Elon Musk, swooping in and buying MSNBC. And then at the time, if they were trying to like ready it as a property for an acquisition, maybe that's what's going on. Or maybe she's just hard to work with.
Yeah, I think it was the Comcast stuff. Like Comcast is a terrible business whose entire existence depends on largesse from the government, regulatory for the most part. And so that is like the most vulnerable kind of company.
Yeah.
And you don't want to anger the king, if you depend on the king.
I don't know. Joy Reid, I guess we probably disagree on this, but I've found her to be one of the more difficult, or one of the representations of a lot of the stuff that went wrong during Trump-era journalism. And to her credit, one of the more interesting things she did, she would have conservatives, right-wingers, and MAGA people on, and she made compelling television because she fought. And that's something that I think people like Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes and Nicole Wallace, I suppose, should do more of. So I definitely give her credit for that.
I agree, actually. I think the Blue MAGA stuff is totally fine to do as content if you're going to have people arguing with you on there.
Right.
No, it's not my kind of thing. It's not what I would want to watch. But like, if you're going to debate it out with people, then fine. It's the Blue MAGA echo chamber stuff that becomes really corrosive.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Rachel Maddow, I think, has sadly fallen prey to that. I actually think Rachel Maddow is a really smart and talented journalist.
She is,
and has...
Her monologues are always the long, 10-minute long thing she does at the top. Those are always fun.
Well, they were also masterfully crafted, and the writing was extremely compelling. If you were watching some of those...
where is this going? Where is this going?
Right, the Trump 1 monologues that Rachel Maddow would do, which became kind of famous or infamous, but probably infamous after she claimed to have Trump's tax returns, and all of Washington was watching.
I even watched that.
Yeah, me too. The opening of Maddow that night, and it was like Geraldo at the vault by the end of it. Like she had, her scoop was like way overhyped on what she actually had, but the writing was just masterful. So it's sad when people get kind of sucked into the universe where they just have purged anyone who might disagree. I think the best segment on the debate between porn, the debate over whether there's porn in schools, and the library controversies is between Joy Reid and Tiffany Justice on Joy Reid's MSNBC show, and I recommend everybody watch that.
It's good because it forces them both to learn what the other side knows and understands and thinks, and then before you can rebut it.
Yeah.
All right. So up next we've got Juan David Rojas, who's conservative, but kind of a heterodox conservative.
I don't even know if
writer when it comes to Latin American politics.
Roughly, I mean, he's conservative on immigration policies. I wonder, maybe we should ask him how he sees himself. But he does fantastically interesting and heterodox coverage of Latin American politics, from Ecuador to Venezuela to Cuba and to Mexico as well, and has been on a tear recently with some interesting coverage of Claudia Sheinbaum, friend of the show, and friend of the world, Venezuela. We particularly want to dive into a story he's written on Venezuela because happening under the surface, percolating under the surface of this administration, is a divide over how to approach Venezuela between like the Rick Grinnell, Laura Loomer camp and the old school Cold Warriors. So we're going to dive into all of that with Juan David Rojas right after this.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.